When my wife said she could only give me one night a month, I thought she was joking. So I gave her exactly what she asked for and disappeared for 29 days. What I found when I came back made my blood run cold. She wasn't tired. She was making room for someone else. My name is Dermot Callahan, but everyone calls me Derry. I'm 42 years old, and I spend my days bringing dead neon signs back to life. Motels, diners, old bars, places with character that modern LED strips could never match. It's honest work, pays well enough, and gives me freedom to travel. At least, it used to feel like freedom. The night everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I'd just gotten back from a 3-day job in Nevada, restoring a 1950s motor lodge sign. My hands still smelled like electrical cleaner, and my back ached from working overhead. All I wanted was a cold beer, and maybe to catch up with my wife, Sloan. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, her blonde hair pulled back in that messy bun she wore when she was stressed. Sloan had always been beautiful, sharp features, green eyes that could cut glass when she was angry. Tonight, they looked tired. "Hey, babe," I said, dropping my tool bag by the door. "How was your week?" Sloan didn't look up from whatever she was stirring on the stove. "Fine," she said. Just that one word, flat as roadkill. I tried again. "Smells good. What are we having?" "Pasta," she replied, still not turning around. "There's beer in the fridge." Something was off. Usually when I came back from a job, Sloan would at least ask how it went. She used to be interested in my work, would laugh when I told her about the quirky motel owners or the ancient wiring I had to navigate. Tonight felt different. I grabbed a beer and leaned against the counter. "Everything okay? You seem tired," Sloan finished for me. She finally turned around, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Distance. Like she was looking through me instead of at me. "We need to talk," she said. Those 4 words hit me like a punch to the gut. Nothing good ever followed. "We need to talk." I set down my beer, suddenly not thirsty anymore. "Okay," I said carefully. "What about?" Sloan stirred the pasta one more time, then turned off the burner. She leaned back against the stove, crossing her arms over her chest like armor. "I've been thinking," she said, "about us. About what I need." "What you need?" "Space," she said. "Time to breathe. This marriage feels suffocating." The word hit me like a slap. Suffocating? I traveled for work half the month. How much more space could she want? "I don't understand," I said. Sloan sighed, like explaining this to me was exhausting. "I can offer you one night a month, Derry. That's it. That's all I have left to give." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. When it didn't come, I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "One night a month," I repeated slowly. "Take it or leave it," she said with a shrug. I stood there in my own kitchen, staring at my wife like she'd just spoken in a foreign language. "One night a month." The words kept bouncing around in my head like a pinball. "You're serious?" I said. It wasn't a question. "Dead serious," Sloan replied, turning back to drain the pasta. Steam rose from the colander, but the room felt ice cold. I watched her move around the kitchen with practiced efficiency, setting plates, grabbing forks. Like she hadn't just blown up our marriage with the casual tone you'd use to order coffee. "Can I ask why?" I said. Sloan paused, her hand on the cabinet door. "Because I need space to breathe, Derry. This whole setup feels like I'm suffocating." "What setup?" "I'm gone half the month for work." "That's not the same thing," she said, spooning pasta onto plates. "When you're here, you expect things. Attention, conversation, intimacy. It's exhausting. Exhausting. Like loving me was a chore she'd been putting off." I sat down at the table, my appetite gone. "So you've thought this through?" "I have," Sloan said, sitting across from me. "I think it'll be good for both of us. You can focus on your work without worrying about me. I can focus on myself." The way she said it made me realize this wasn't a discussion. It was a declaration. "And if I don't agree?" Sloan met my eyes for the first time all evening. "Then we have a bigger problem than I thought." I picked at my pasta, tasting nothing. 15 years of marriage, and apparently I'd been suffocating her the whole time. The worst part was how calm she seemed about it all, like she'd been planning this speech for weeks. "When does this start?" I asked. "Now," she said. "I mean, you just got back, so we can count tonight if you want." "If I want." Like she was doing me a favor. I pushed back from the table. "I need some air." I walked outside and sat on the porch steps, staring at the street where we'd lived for 8 years. Normal houses with normal families having normal Thursday night dinners. Not scheduling their marriages like dental appointments. My phone buzzed. A text from Jimmy, the guy who owned the motel chain I'd been working for. New job in Arizona, 3 weeks minimum. Normally, I'd check with Sloan before taking something that long. Tonight, I texted back, I'll take it. When I went back inside, Sloan was loading the dishwasher. I'm taking a job in Arizona, I said. 3 weeks. She didn't look up. Okay. That's it. What do you want me to say, Derry? You travel for work. This is normal. But it wasn't normal. Nothing about this felt normal. I went upstairs and started packing. Not just for Arizona, for however long this new version of our marriage was going to last. If Sloan wanted space, I'd give her more than she bargained for. As I folded shirts into my duffel bag, I heard her turn on the TV downstairs. Some show she liked that I'd never been interested in. She sounded relaxed, maybe even happy. That's when it hit me. She wasn't afraid I'd leave. She was counting on me staying, accepting her terms, grateful for whatever scraps of attention she decided to throw my way. She thought I was too weak to walk away. Maybe she was right, but she was about to find out exactly what kind of space looked like when someone stopped begging for crumbs. 3 weeks in Arizona gave me plenty of time to think. I was restoring neon signs for a chain of vintage motels along Route 66. And there's something about working with your hands in the desert heat that clears your head. Every night, I'd sit in my motel room with a beer and stare at my phone. Sloan had texted me exactly twice in 3 weeks. Once to ask if I'd paid the electric bill. Once to tell me the garbage disposal was broken. Not, I miss you. Or, how's the job going? Just household management. That's when I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her maintenance crew. I called Tommy, my buddy who ran a storage facility back home. Derry, what's up? Tommy said when he picked up. I need a favor, I said. Can you rent me a unit? Small one. And I need you to not mention it to anyone, especially Sloan. Everything okay, man? Define okay, I said. But yeah, I just need some space for my stuff. Tommy didn't ask questions. Good friends don't. On my last day in Arizona, I got a text from Sloan. When are you coming home? I stared at that message for a long time. Home? Where was that exactly? The house where my wife had turned me into a monthly appointment? I texted back, soon. But I didn't go straight home. Instead, I drove to the storage unit Tommy had set up for me and started making trips. Clothes, tools, my guitar, photo albums, anything that mattered to me. I wasn't moving out exactly. I was just creating options. The house felt different when I finally walked in. Cleaner somehow, like Sloan had been deep cleaning to celebrate my absence. She was in the living room, reading a book I'd never seen before. You're back, she said without looking up. I am, I replied. How was Arizona? Huh, that was it. No welcome home kiss, no questions about the job, no interest in the stories I used to tell her about the road. She turned a page in her book like I was interrupting. I'm tired, I said. Long drive. There's leftover Chinese in the fridge, Sloan said. I went upstairs and unpacked the bare minimum. Most of my stuff was safe in the storage unit now, waiting. For what? I wasn't sure yet. But having an exit strategy felt like putting on armor. That night, Sloan didn't even pretend to be interested in spending time together. She went to bed early, and I slept in the guest room without her saying a word about it. The next morning, she was already gone when I woke up. No note, no goodbye. Just an empty house and the distinct feeling that she was happier when I wasn't in it. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, planning my next move. Sloan wanted space. She was about to get an education in what real distance looked like. I started small. Sloan wanted one night a month. I decided to give her exactly what she asked for, and nothing more. The first test came 2 days after I got back from Arizona. Sloan was getting ready for what she called book club, something new she'd started while I was gone. She was putting on makeup in the bathroom mirror when she realized I was watching her. What? She asked. Nothing, I said, just wondering if book club requires that much lipstick. She stopped applying mascara. Excuse me. Just an observation, I said casually. Must be some book. Sloan's reflection glared at me. It's called making an effort, Derry. Maybe you should try it sometime. I'll remember that, I said, for our monthly appointment. She went very still. What did you say? You heard me, I said, walking into the bedroom. You scheduled us for once a month. So that's what you get. Once a month, I'll make an effort. The other 29 days, we're roommates. I could feel her staring at my back as I pulled on a clean shirt. Where are you going? She asked. Out, I said. Jimmy wants me to look at a job in Colorado. Might be gone a week. This was a lie. Jimmy hadn't called, but I had plenty of work lined up, and suddenly the idea of spending more time on the road sounded perfect. A week, Sloan said. You just got back. That's how work works, I said, grabbing my keys. Especially when you're not tied down to any particular schedule. I left her standing in the bathroom, mascara wand frozen halfway to her eyelashes. I drove to Murphy's, a bar downtown where I knew some of the regulars. Guys who worked with their hands, who understood that sometimes you needed to drink a beer and not explain your whole life story. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. Sloan, when will you be home? I looked at the message for a full minute before typing back. Late. That was it. No explanation, no apology, no promise to make it up to her. The same energy she'd been giving me for months. When I finally got home around midnight, all the lights were off except the porch light. Sloan's car was in the garage, but I could smell cigarette smoke in the air. Sloan didn't smoke. At least, she never used to. I went inside and found a wine glass in the sink. Just one. But there were 2 coffee mugs on the counter, both still slightly warm. Book club must have run late. I went to bed in the guest room again. Sloan didn't come looking for me, didn't ask where I'd been, didn't seem to care that I'd been gone for 5 hours without explanation. The next morning, she was distant but polite, like we were strangers sharing an Airbnb. Coffee, she offered. Sure, I said. She poured me a cup and handed it to me without meeting my eyes. I'll be working late tonight, she said. Don't wait up. Wasn't planning on it, I replied. Something flickered across her face, surprise maybe, or annoyance. Like she'd expected me to ask questions or object. But I didn't. I just drank my coffee and started planning my next disappearing act. 2 weeks into my new strategy, Sloan was starting to show cracks in her composure. She'd begun asking more questions about where I was going, when I'd be back, what I was doing. The same questions she used to brush off when I asked them. I was loading my truck for another job, this time in Utah, a week-long restoration of a classic diner sign, when she came outside. Another trip? She asked, arms crossed. Work is work, I said, not looking up from securing my equipment. You're taking a lot of jobs lately. Bills don't pay themselves. She stood there watching me work, and I could feel her frustration building. Finally, she said what she'd really come out to say. I thought we could spend some time together this weekend. It's been a while. I stopped loading and looked at her. A while? It's been 3 weeks. Right on schedule for your monthly plan. That's not what I meant, Sloan said quickly. Sure it is, I said. You wanted space. You wanted to schedule us like a dentist appointment. Well, congratulations. You got exactly what you asked for. Her face flushed. You're being ridiculous. Am I? You said 1 night a month, Sloan. So we had our night 3 weeks ago. Next appointment isn't for another week. It doesn't have to be that rigid, she said. I almost laughed. Now it doesn't? What changed your mind? She opened her mouth, then closed it. What could she say? That she missed me? That she realized 1 night a month was insane? That would mean admitting she'd been wrong. I'll be back Friday, I said, climbing into my truck. Derry, wait, she called out. But I was already backing out of the driveway. The Utah job was straightforward, but I took my time. No rush to get home to a wife who treated me like an inconvenience. On Thursday night, I was having a beer at a local dive bar when I met Julie, a waitress with bright eyes and an easy laugh who actually seemed interested in my stories about neon signs. Must be lonely, traveling so much, Julie said. You'd think so, I said. But sometimes the road feels more like home than home does. She understood what I meant without me having to explain it. When was the last time Sloan had understood anything about me? We talked until closing time. Nothing happened. I wasn't ready for that yet. But it felt good to be around someone who didn't look at me like I was taking up too much space. When I got home Friday afternoon, Sloan was waiting with dinner ready and candles lit on the table. Welcome home, she said, trying to smile. I looked at the setup, the effort she'd made, the nervous hope in her eyes, and felt nothing. No warmth, no appreciation, no desire to pretend this was normal. Thanks, I said, sitting down. Smells good. We ate in silence. Every few minutes, Sloan would try to start a conversation, and I'd give her one-word answers. Not because I was trying to be cruel, but because I genuinely had nothing to say to her anymore. After dinner, she put her hand on mine. "I missed you," she said softly. I looked down at her hand, the same hand that had pushed me away for months, and gently pulled mine free. "Did you?" I asked. The weekend passed like we were strangers sharing a house. Sloane kept trying to bridge the gap between us, but every attempt felt forced, desperate even. She suggested movies I might like, offered to cook my favorite meals, asked about my work with an interest that felt rehearsed. I went through the motions, but kept my distance. Polite but cold. Present but unavailable. Sunday night. Sloane was in the shower when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wasn't trying to snoop. It was just sitting there, lighting up like a beacon. The message preview made my blood freeze. "Can't wait to see you Tuesday. Same place. See. Not a girlfriend. Not book club. See." I picked up the phone before I could think better of it. No password protection. Sloane had always said she had nothing to hide. The message thread with C told a different story. 3 months of messages. Plans to meet. Inside jokes. Photos of restaurants I'd never been to with her. And then, the ones that made my stomach drop. "Missing you already. Tonight was perfect. Can't believe I waited so long to feel this way." I scrolled up, finding the beginning of whatever this was. It started around the time Sloane had begun acting distant. Around the time she decided one night a month was all she could give me. The shower was still running. I scrolled through more messages, taking screenshots with my own phone. Evidence. Though for what, I wasn't sure yet. Then I found the photos. Not explicit, but intimate. Sloane laughing in a restaurant booth, across from someone whose reflection I could see in the window behind her. A man's hand reaching across a table to touch hers. Her face in profile, looking at someone with an expression I hadn't seen in years. She looked happy. Really, genuinely happy. Happier than she'd looked with me in longer than I cared to remember. The shower shut off. I put her phone back exactly where I'd found it and walked downstairs, my mind racing. See, wasn't just some emotional affair. This was a full relationship, complete with dinner dates and secret meetings, and the kind of joy Sloane claimed she couldn't give me anymore. She hadn't been suffocating in our marriage. She'd been making room for someone else. When she came downstairs in her robe, hair still damp, I was sitting on the couch pretending to watch TV. "What are you watching?" she asked, settling beside me like nothing had changed. "Nothing special," I said. She curled up next to me, closer than she'd been in months. "We should do this more often. Just relax together." I looked at her, really looked. She was trying so hard to be the wife she used to be, or at least the wife she thought I wanted. But I knew now what she was really doing. She was covering her tracks. "Yeah," I said. "We should." But as she leaned against my shoulder, all I could think about was those photos. The way she'd looked at C. The way she'd never looked at me anymore. Tomorrow, I was going to find out who C really was. And then I was going to figure out exactly how to give Sloane what she deserved. Finding C turned out to be easier than I expected. One of the benefits of working with vintage signs is that you get to know every bar, restaurant, and hotel in a 50-mile radius. The background in Sloane's photos showed a distinctive Art Deco window pattern I recognized immediately. The Sterling Hotel. Downtown. Expensive. The kind of place Sloane claimed we couldn't afford for our anniversary, but apparently had no problem visiting with her mystery man. I called the hotel Tuesday afternoon, right when Sloane's messages said she'd be meeting C. "Sterling Hotel. How may I help you?" The desk clerk answered. "Hi. I'm trying to reach my wife," I said. "She's having drinks in your bar with a friend. Blonde woman, probably with a tall, dark-haired guy." "Let me check the bar area for you, sir. Can I have her name?" "Sloane Callahan." There was a pause. "I see a blonde woman at table 7, but the reservation is under a different name. Sterling Party of 2. Sterling. Of course. That's them," I said. "Can you tell her Derry called? Emergency at home." "Certainly, sir." I hung up and sat in my truck across the street, watching the hotel entrance. 20 minutes later, Sloane rushed out, phone pressed to her ear, followed by a man in an expensive suit who looked exactly like the photos I'd seen. Christopher Sterling. I'd done my homework. Investment banker, divorced 6 months ago, drives a black Mercedes. Lives in the penthouse of the building where his bank is headquartered. The same building Sloane claimed she was visiting for art gallery business meetings. I followed them at a distance as they got into separate cars. Sterling drove toward his building. Sloane headed home, probably to create some story about why she had to leave her book club early. By the time I got home, she was in the kitchen, pacing. "Derry, thank God," she said when I walked in. "I got your message. What's the emergency?" I looked at her flushed face, her messed up lipstick, the guilty panic in her eyes. "False alarm," I said. "Turned out to be nothing." "Nothing? But you said." "I thought I smelled gas," I said casually. "Called the utility company. Just the neighbor's grill." Sloane stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "You called me for that." "Safety first," I said. "How was book club?" "Fine," she said quickly. "We discussed the book." "Which book was that again?" Her eyes went wide for just a second. The one about the woman who leaves her husband." I almost smiled. Even when she was lying, she couldn't help telling the truth. "Sounds interesting," I said. "Maybe I should read it." "It's not really your type," Sloane said. "You'd be surprised what interests me these days." That night, I lay in the guest room planning my next move. I had photos. I had proof. I had a name and address. But I wasn't ready to play that card yet. Because I was starting to understand something about Sloane. She thought she was smarter than me. She thought she could have both lives, her stable marriage and her exciting affair. And I'd never figure it out. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The old Derry would have confronted Sloane immediately, would have thrown the evidence in her face and demanded explanations, would have begged her to choose me. The new Derry had a better plan. I started with my appearance. Got a haircut at an expensive downtown salon instead of the barber shop I'd used for 15 years. Bought new clothes, not the practical work shirts and jeans I usually wore, but fitted button-downs and dark jeans that actually looked good on me. I joined a gym. Started lifting weights for the first time since college. The physical work helped clear my head, and watching my body change gave me confidence I hadn't felt in years. More importantly, I started saying yes to things I've been turning down for years. Tommy invited me to a poker game with some guys from the construction trades. Before, I would have checked with Sloane first, probably stayed home. This time I went. "Damn, Derry," said Mike, a plumber who'd known me for years. "You look different." "Good different. Feel different too," I said, dealing the cards. "Marriage treating you well." "Marriage is what you make of it," I said. The guys laughed, but I wasn't joking. I was making something new out of mine. Something that didn't require me to shrink myself to fit Sloane's expectations. When I got home from poker at midnight, Sloane was waiting up. "Where have you been?" she asked. "Out," I said. "Out where?" "Playing cards with the guys." She looked me up and down, taking in my new shirt, my trimmed hair, the way I was standing straighter. "You look," she started. "What? Different? Good different or bad different?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "Just different." I headed upstairs. "I'm tired. Long day." "Derry," she called after me. "Are you having a midlife crisis?" I stopped on the stairs and looked back at her. She was genuinely confused, maybe even a little scared. For months, she'd been pulling away, creating distance, scheduling our intimacy like a chore. Now that I was doing the same thing, she didn't like how it felt. "No," I said. "I'm just figuring out who I am when I'm not trying to be what you want me to be." The next morning, I was loading my truck for another job when Sloane came outside in her robe. "How long will you be gone this time?" she asked. 2 weeks, I said. "Maybe 3. 3 weeks. That's a long time." "Is it? You won't even notice I'm gone. You'll be too busy with book club." She wrapped her robe tighter around herself. "Maybe I could come with you sometime. See what you do on these trips." I almost laughed. 6 months ago, I would have been thrilled. Now it sounded like desperation. "These are work trips, Sloane, not vacations." "I know, but besides," I said, closing the truck bed, "I thought you needed space." "This is space." I got in the truck and started the engine. Through the windshield, I watched her standing there in her robe, looking smaller somehow than she had in years. She was starting to realize what she'd lost. But it was too late. The man who would have crawled back to her was gone. In his place was someone who knew his own worth. And his worth wasn't measured by how much attention Sloane decided to give him once a month. 3 weeks later, I came home to find Sloane in full panic mode. She'd been calling and texting all day, something she hadn't done in months. When I walked through the door, she practically jumped on me. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "I've been calling for hours." "Working," I said, setting down my bag. Phone was in the truck. "You can't just disappear like that." I was worried. I looked at her, really looked. Her makeup was smeared, her hair was a mess, and she had that wild look in her eyes that people get when their carefully constructed world starts falling apart. Worried about what? I asked. About you. About us. About everything. I walked to the kitchen and grabbed a beer. Sloane followed me like a lost puppy. Derry, we need to talk, she said. We're talking. Really talk. About our marriage. About what's been happening. I leaned against the counter and took a long drink. What's been happening, Sloane? She opened her mouth, then closed it. What could she say? That she'd been cheating? That the once-a-month schedule was to cover her affair? That Christopher Sterling had apparently dumped her for someone newer? Because that's what had happened. I'd been watching, waiting, and 3 days ago Sterling had shown up at the hotel bar with a brunette. Sloane had been calling him nonstop since then, but he wasn't taking her calls. I made a mistake, she said finally. Just one. I thought I needed space, but I was wrong. I miss you. I miss us. Do you? I asked. Or do you miss having a backup plan? Her face went white. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not stupid, Sloane. I know about Christopher. The beer bottle slipped from her hand and shattered on the kitchen floor. For a moment, we both just stared at the broken glass and spreading liquid. Derry, she whispered. Sterling Hotel, Tuesday afternoons. The art gallery meetings that never happened. The book club that doesn't exist. Should I go on? Sloane's legs gave out, and she sank into a kitchen chair. How long have you known? Long enough. Are you going to divorce me? I studied her face. She looked terrified, but not because she loved me. She was scared because her safety net was gone. Sterling had moved on, and now she was facing the possibility of being alone. That depends, I said. On what? On whether you think I'm stupid enough to take you back. She started crying then. Real tears. Not the manipulative kind she'd been using for months. I love you, she sobbed. I know I messed up, but I love you. No, I said quietly. You love the idea of not being alone. There's a difference. I walked upstairs and started packing. Not just a few days' worth of clothes this time. Everything. What are you doing? Sloane asked from the doorway. Why should have done months ago? Please don't leave. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. I zipped up my suitcase and looked at her. You wanted space, Sloane. Now you have all the space in the world. 6 months later, I was sitting in my own apartment, a small place above an antique shop that came with character and peace of mind. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks ago. Sloane got the house, I got my freedom. Julie was in the kitchen making coffee, humming the same tune she'd been humming since I met her in Utah. She'd moved to Portland 2 months ago. Not for me exactly, but not for me either. You're thinking too loud, she called out. Just remembering, I said. She came over with 2 mugs and settled next to me on the couch. Good memories or bad ones? Weird ones. Like how different I am now. Different how? I thought about it. The old Derry would have been terrified of being alone, would have crawled back to Sloane the moment she showed the slightest interest. This Derry had walked away from a 15-year marriage without looking back. Stronger, I guess. More honest with myself. Julie smiled. I like this version of you, even though he comes with baggage. Everyone comes with baggage. The question is whether you're carrying it or whether it's carrying you. My phone buzzed. Text from Sloane. Can we talk? I have something important to tell you. I showed Julie the message. What do you think? I think she's probably pregnant, Julie said matter-of-factly. What? Classic move. When the manipulation doesn't work, when the tears don't work, when begging doesn't work, pregnancy scare. I stared at the message. Julie was probably right. It was exactly the kind of desperate play Sloane would make. I deleted the message without responding. No regrets. Julie asked. None, I said, and meant it. The man who had begged for scraps of attention from his own wife was gone. In his place was someone who knew his worth, who didn't apologize for taking up space, who understood that love shouldn't feel like charity work. Sloane had wanted to give me 1 night a month. Julie wanted to give me every day, and every day wanted to give something back to her. That afternoon, we drove out to see a vintage motel sign I was restoring outside the city. As we worked together, Julie holding the ladder while I rewired the connections, I realized something profound. I hadn't just survived my marriage ending. I discovered who I was supposed to be all along. The neon flickered to life, casting red and blue patterns across the desert sky. Beautiful, honest light that didn't hide anything or pretend to be something it wasn't. Just like the life I was building now.